What to do with your kids when you're a nihilist, when you're an absurdist, when you're a secularist? I get this question quite a bit. I don't know why it's taken me so long to address it, but here we are, my top 10 nuggets of wisdom for raising your kids in an absurd world. I usually keep my parenting very private. I don't post any pictures of my children on social media. But for this video, I'm just going to give you a little bit of a window into how I'm trying to figure this out. And hopefully that's helpful to someone else. Or at the very least, you can leave today with a sense of camaraderie that you're not trying to do this alone. So I have, I think, 10 pieces of advice. A lot of this is just from my own life. While I can say I'm an expert in the concept of nihilism, I have education and experience in that space, and I am a parent, I am not a parenting expert. So this is my best stab at it. And let me know in the comments just areas that I can improve on, things that I missed, things that you're doing that's working. This is a place where I am in this too. So there are days where the whiplash between nihilistic philosophy that I'm thinking about and the small talk that I have to do by being a parent and having to talk to other parents, the whiplash of that is very rough for me, I won't lie. But here's what I'm working with so far that makes it okay to be a parent even in this absurd world. So the first is normalizing not knowing. We essentially have two choices when it comes to children. We either give them a story to comfort them, or we help them to become strong. And one way we do that is to build up their tolerance for not knowing. So children naturally ask very deep existential questions about death and purpose in the universe. So instead of providing them absolute answers, as religion often does, teach them that it's okay to not know. This builds tolerance at an early age, and we have research that tolerance for ambiguity is associated with better coping mechanisms, more psychological flexibility, and just more stability in general. So when children learn to live with open questions that, hey, I don't know this, but my mom still loves me and I'm still very safe, that's really good for the development of children. They learn to explore rather than shut down in the face of the unknown, and they're going to need that if you're not giving them one of those overarching kind of religious stories. So they learn that it's okay to not know, that they can build a life in the I don't know, that they can have relationships in the I don't know, that they're very safe in the I don't know. And they also learn that it's okay to come up with their own answers and that they're safe to do so within your family structure. They learn that they can be different from you and yet be totally safe. I think my favorite book for this for kids is Sam Harris's wife, Annika Harris. She wrote a children's book called I Wonder, where it just models how this world is cause for awe and wonder and play. And it's this kind of book between, I think it's a mother and a child, even when we don't know the answer. For teens, I really liked the book The Magic of Reality by Richard Dawkins. It's up there on my shelf somewhere. Which really models a sense of wonder. And my oldest read it and really, really enjoyed it. And it helped him kind of fall in love with the magic of reality and how exciting it is that we don't know things, because that means that there's so much to explore and discover. So that's number one, is helping kids build up tolerance towards not knowing. Number two is building horizontal morality. So vertical morality is the kind that most of us were raised with. This is right and wrong, and it comes from above. It's based on authority or your parents or teachers or the law, and the message is be good because someone is watching, or because I said so, or because there will be consequences. It's all about rules handed down and consequences handed out from people who are higher above than you. So that's vertical morality. When you're raising kids without invoking a higher power or divine judgment, or even because I said so, that framework doesn't hold up. And honestly, it doesn't serve our long-term goals anyway. What we want is horizontal morality, which is morality rooted in empathy, consequences that affect real people, a deep understanding of how our actions impact the world around us. It's not about doing good so that you don't go to hell. It's about doing good because it helps others and makes life better for everyone, including you. And so religious people have this fear that if you remove vertical morality, that you're going to go straight to moral relativism and anarchy. But part of the problem is how you're structuring that. So if you had a classroom that was managed by a camera in the corner and the principal said, I'm always watching, and you set up a system where the morality is based on the idea that the principal is always watching, then yeah, when the kids realize that the camera is broken, you're going to expect to see some questionable behavior, but it's because you set up the classroom that way. You set up morality that way. If you build more morality horizontally and build up the moral muscle of noticing how actions affect others and also how it affects the relationship with yourself, then actually you don't need that camera. You could essentially leave the room and come back and see kids not go crazy while you're gone because you've set up a moral system that doesn't require the I'm watching you all the time thing. And so even in a world with no objective morality, every piece of data we have, every single piece of data we have says that a good life, one with meaning and purpose and intimate relationships and inner peace, being able to look yourself in the mirror, all of that comes with living a moral life, living according to your core values, treating people how you want to be treated, having a reputation as a good person and being trustworthy. All the data that we have shows that if you knew that you could steal $1 million in a way that you knew was unethical, let's say it was against all of your core values and you couldn't face your mother or your child doing this thing, all of the data that we have shows that even if you pull it off and don't get caught, you're going to be miserable inside your $1 million mansion because you're going to have to constantly be distracted because you're not going to be able to sit with yourself in peace. So our morality with our kids has to be, didn't that feel good when you did that? Golden rule, taking back the grocery cart because you point out that if you were that worker over there, would you like to walk all over the lot and get the carts? Actually, that's one of our best tests to see if you're a good person because everyone agrees that we all should take back the cart, but there's no consequence or reward. So if you do it just because it's the right thing, then we have some data that shows that you're a good person. So we just model that as we go, not obedience, not authority. How did it feel to be a good friend today? How did it feel to lie and get caught in this lie? So now that I can't trust you as much because now you lie and it's hurt our relationship. So that kind of horizontal morality. Some studies show that religion is good for them in the sense of identity or community or things like that. But when it comes to morality, this is where secular children consistently outshine religious children. There are some areas where religion is doing better than secularism, but when it comes to morality, even in children, secular children are consistently outshining religious children in things like compassion and empathy. So research studied from, I think it was 1,200 children between the ages of 5 and 12 from 6 different countries. It was US, Canada, Turkey, South Africa, and China. They assessed children's altruism, and they had this game. It was, I'm not going to go into it, but it was a dictator game. They were given stickers, and they had to decide how many they were going to share with these anonymous peers. And so they were evaluating their moral sensitivity and their pro-social and altruistic behavior. And what they found was that the children from atheist or non-religious homes showed greater altruistic behavior than children from religious homes. Religious children were more judgmental, and that didn't translate to more pro-social behavior. It just made them more judgmental. And so the longer that the child had been raised in a religious household, the less altruistic they became in the game. And so this is one that we can do well in the secular world. Consistently notice that your life is better and other people's lives are better when you are moral. Number 3 is build a family culture. This one takes some work. This one took like a good year of work with my family to try to rebuild after I left Mormonism. So building a family culture with rituals and traditions, it's hard at first. And I think this is one where the post-religious groups are not doing this well because it's enough work to just leave a culture and religion on its own. Like that's hard. But then to also have to rebuild a family culture too, that's incredibly difficult to do in one lifetime. So what children need is a nest period. They need a period where the world is smaller, where they get to develop an ego and a sense of identity and belonging, and when there's good guys and bad guys and structure and order. And what's unfair is that religions and countries have had thousands of years to put together this kind of safety net and liturgical calendar and holidays and food and story and values and all of that. And so it seems to be the nature of humanity that we either cult too much or we cult too little. And so it means that the secular world may never be able to build the kind of tight communities that religion can. It doesn't have strong enough shared myths to create dogma, which creates money and resources. And what this means for you is that means that you're going to have to piecemeal this together on your own. So for me, this started with pulling my kids from church and doing Sunday home church. We went on a walk. We read a book from the library, tried to include some kind of moral lesson. We played games as a family. We read books. We kept off our screens for kind of the amount of the time that we were usually at church. And it was how I wanted to do church. And now my kids wake up on Sunday morning and it's time for French toast and books and family games and time in nature and moral lessons. And now it has a momentum of its own. But at the beginning, it did take like a push on my part. And so you have to, there's not going to be one secular place where you're going to be able to get family culture. It's going to have to be something that you build with the uniqueness of your own family. My oldest son does karate. That's part of his community. I pay someone to teach him the lessons of Bruce Lee. My daughter's in Girl Scouts. I pay to have her do that. And I have to, God, I got to do all the cookie things. And I'm a volleyball coach for her at the YMCA because she likes that community over there. I didn't like the idea of prayer when I had first left Mormonism. I didn't like this idea of like this genie in the sky that we say wishes to, but I did love the idea, and there's good science behind gathering for a meal and marking your values. And so now my family, we hold hands and we say Ohana means family. Family means no one gets left behind or forgotten. It's just a little line from a animated movie, Lilo and Stitch, but it fits our family, and my kids love it, and it marks our values as a family. I try to volunteer at the school when I can. I do want to do that more. I want to get involved in my kids' school community. I have a goal to get better at that this year. We also wrote a kind of family motto that's hung by the door of like 6 things that define us as a family that we stand by. Some of those things are like, we work hard and we play hard. We're always like honesty is a really big one, that we're honesty, that we don't lie to each other. We just put 6 things that are important to us, that are our values. Some of it is me, some of it is my husband, some of it the kids helped us to kind of define what's important to us. And I put that on the wall like I used to do as a Mormon with like 10 commandments or, whatever scriptures I was putting on the wall, or temples or pictures of Jesus. I have a few friends that we can call family. We celebrate Star Wars Day, but we also celebrate Christmas. We light Chinese lanterns on New Year's Eve and talk to each other about our goals and how we can support each other. Memorial Day weekend, I try to get a cabin up north for an hour or two up north to be able to spend time as a family. After school, we have chores and homework. I have question cards that we use for conversation around the dinner table. Over time, and it's not perfect, there's still a lot of areas that I want to work on. And my younger 2 children, I haven't quite found their community or their thing. But over time, we develop a family culture where my kids know what to expect and it's consistent, but it also represents us and our values. And the reason I intentionally spent time building this is because I know the research and I know that it's really good for children. Having a family culture, holidays, routines, structure, chores, a sense of what it means to be a family for you. Family rituals are associated with high self-esteem, a sense of identity, good academic performance. These children feel anchored. They have a nest to be able to grow. And the problem is sometimes in nuanced spaces, especially if you're facing nihilism and all the philosophical nuance that we get around that, we need order so that we can fly the nest. We need identity so we can let it go. When you don't give kids a nest period, and you also give them a phone, so this generation has a bigger world with less resources when it comes to their identity and belonging than any other generation in history, of course they are struggling. They lost all the rituals, the family culture, the rites of passage to mark and ritualize moving through puberty, which is essential for emotional processing in this age. Like, no wonder we're seeing high levels of anxiety and also identity issues and delayed adolescence in the younger generations. So I started with just one thing, that I would hold hands with my kids when it was time for a prayer and that we were just going to say a quote. But as we went, we would replace or edit other things that religion provides that are good for kids, until now, a few years later, I think, there's some areas that I need to work on, but it's a functioning family culture. Like it's a functioning system of what to expect. And I do think that my kids are benefiting from that. Whereas if I would have just left Mormonism and then just like not kind of intentionally tried to recreate some of these things, I think that they would be more struggling with their identity. But it remains to be seen. Good books for this. Good Without Grace. Small Creatures Such as We by Sasha Sagan, Carl Sagan's daughter, and Religion for Atheists by Elaine de Botton are my favorite books for how can we extract the good things that religion provides for children, but do it in a way that aligns with our values and our own beliefs as secular people or even nihilists. All right. Number 4, model meaning making. We can model what meaning looks like. So instead of saying a religious story for your meaning, like your meaning is to prepare the world for Jesus to come so he doesn't throw you into a fire, that's one story. We can build meaning through experience, and we model this in our lives and our language. My husband and I both took risks to do what we want to do in life. My husband has an ice cream store. I talk to people about nihilism. I talk to people in religious deconstruction. That's what I do. So we both took pretty heavy financial risks to do that, but we model to our kids that it's better that mom only wears the same 5 shirts and she's doing what she loves than to just live for other people. And I can already see in my kids that they have already the sense of deciding what they want to do in life without this plan from me of what I want them to do for my own ego. They have dreams and they have plans. And if we ever have a little bit of money, like from a tax return, we decide as a family what we want to do to have an experience. And when financial times are hard, we're honest about it and we tell our kids what we're working towards and why it's worth it, and we may do. And so just in our modeling, we can always be talking about life as an experience and the joy of getting good at something, the joy of working towards something, the joy of personal development, the joy of meeting new people, helping them to understand that the point of life is to experience life. And we can do this in the context of our family. We can help each other and support each other. I'm going to be here holding your hand while you discover who you are and develop who you are and decide what to do in life as your meaning. Now, the danger here is that kids will say, well, my meaning in life is I want to lay down all day, not go to school, play Minecraft and eat Oreos and say, hey, like I am enjoying the hell out of life. Like that's the danger. This is why they need modeling. So it's like this game of providing them order and structure and making them do shit, but then pointing to the experience of it. So we're trying volleyball right now with my daughter. And now we know that you're better at soccer and you like it more. That's great now that we know that. You got to learn something new about yourself and you made new friends. You're getting better at piano. And one day, if you keep practicing, my daughter really wants to play Bella's Lullaby, which is, just the song that my daughter wants to learn how to play. So we're forcing them to do shit. We're providing order and structure. But within that, we're pointing to the joy of growth, the joy of people, the joy of projects, the joy of self-development, the joy of relationships, the joy of adventure, the joy of learning new skills, all of that. So hopefully someday they'll have developed the skills that they need to actually make their life how they want to live it. Which brings me to my next point. And some of you guys are going to disagree with me on this, and that's okay. And I could be wrong here. I could be wrong here. But this is where I'm at with my parenting. And I don't know how much I say this publicly because not everybody agrees with this. So take that with a grain of salt. I really believe, this is my point number 5, in creating a small world for them. I think there is no way around raising your kids in some sort of matrix of reality. Something I see that super nihilistic parents do when they have deconstructed everything, God, religion, capitalism, all the isms, and they're just flying outside of that. And they hope that their kids can skip all of that God, capitalism, religious nonsense, skip the binary stages of human development, skip and just go right outside to living outside the matrix. I see some absurdists or nihilists doing things like unschooling with their kids. I actually don't recommend this, and I could be wrong on this one, but I think that's a way to limit freedom in the future. One, kids need that nest period that we talked about earlier to have the kind of psychological safety to fly the nest later in life. So they need order so that they can one day fly to places of nuance and wonder and openness. But also, I think kids deserve the chance to decide how they want to interact in society. The unschooling thing, I think in the end, makes kids less free. Because if my kid decided that he was really bothered by civil injustices and wanted to be a lawyer, there's an academic game there that you need to know how to play. And the unschooled kids will say they weren't prepared for that. I listened to them on TikTok. I wasn't prepared for life, for how to deal with society, and my choices were very limited. So it's like if my kid really wanted to be an author, authors need to get really good at grammar school and need to learn the rules for many years before they decide how they want to break the rules. And I think there's a metaphor in life in there. And I don't think it makes us hypocrites. If we value freedom, which most nihilists do, secular people do, then we have to be honest about how we actually attain freedom. And raising kids with order and structure, even within society that's messed up and absurd and all the things, gives them the skills that they need to decide how they actually want to intentionally interact in that society. Because what we don't want to do is go live in a hut and raise our kids outside of all this absurdity. And I get it, like it's all fucking absurd, but then have no actual options for how they want to live their life and no psychological safety to be able to even jump into places of chaos and deconstruction and nuance. It's like if you give them too much freedom as kids, you actually reduce their ability for freedom when they become more autonomous. So if you give your kids too much freedom as kids, they have delayed adolescence and they don't leave the house till they're 30 years old. If you try to unschool them, you limit their choices for the meaningful work that they could actually fall in love with and benefit themselves and the world by doing. So guess what I tell my kids, even as like a complete, not complete, but like I've met very few people who have like deconstructed more than I have. Like I really, like for 10 years was just blowing up all just all the structures of reality until I hit absolute absurdity and lost my fucking mind, to be honest. But guess what I tell my kids to do? I tell them to do their homework. And I'm coaching 3rd grade volleyball, and they do chores, and we practice good manners at dinner. And yes, it's all so fucking absurd. And there's nothing like more absurd to a nihilist than like social rules and mores that make no sense of it all. And none of it fucking matters. But I do it. And the reason that I do it is because I want my kids to have the tools that they need to decide how they want in freedom to do their life. So yeah, it's weird sometimes to tell my kids to finish their homework when in your head you're thinking like this is a hellscape of reality and the country is falling apart and I don't even know what jobs will exist for them in the future and all of this is absurd. But think of it like world building. What is the small world that I can create for my kids that they can learn to play in so that they have the tools that they need to play in the big world? So going back to the video game analogy that I always use of making your life like the video game that you want to play, like you got to start with Pac-Man, or like in my case, Sonic the Hedgehog. I am very good. I crushed that game before you can start playing very intense, very complex games. And so that's kind of how I think of it in my mind. How can I create a tiny world so that they can have their own video games of life someday? Now, I may be wrong about this. This is my approach based on how I'm seeing the research, and I'm doing the best I can with it until I find a better way. But I almost want parents to like, I want parents to have the ability to say, if I want kids to have freedom to be able to choose how they want to live their life, which is kind of what we want to do, whatever ism you are outside of religion. We want kids to have the freedom to just decide how they want to spend their time with their existence. If I want that for them, how do I get them there? It's going to be order and structure. So then that becomes part of my game, which is what is a tiny little video game of reality that I can create for my kids in order that they can build the tools so that someday they can fly the nest and totally have the skills and psychological safety to be able to fly wherever they want to go. But I can't skip there. It doesn't seem like we can skip there with kids. It gives them too much anxiety and it actually limits their growth. So that's a more controversial take, but that's honestly how I'm doing it. And so I'm sharing it with you in a little bit of vulnerability here. Number 6 is modeling how we face death, and that death is part of life. This is one that is hard at first, but then is something that's totally possible, I think. This one's hard at first, but then gets better. So I'm not going to lie that it doesn't hurt. I'm going to spend a little time here. Half the reason that we have religion is to soothe our children about death. And so there's things that we can do to reduce death anxiety. We're essentially inoculating kids over time about death, but it actually works. So here are some things that we can do to build up our kids' tolerance to the idea that part of life is that we die. and people die around us. So the first thing that we need to do is don't use euphemisms. Say died, say dead. As uncomfortable as that is, kids need clarity. And research shows that euphemisms like went to sleep, passed on, we lost him, that increases anxiety in children because it makes death much more confusing and vague. Like if we lost grandpa, where did he go? Like, can we find them? If death is sleep, why can't they wake up? So be gentle. We don't have to be psycho about this, but be direct. When someone dies, their body starts working and they don't come back, but we will always remember them and their lives matter and we will miss them. And we do this first slowly because it's actually hard to understand the finality of death. So according to like PJ cognitive development, kids from the age of 3 to 5 don't seem to conceptually understand that death is permanent. They may think that the person will come back, and we don't have to like force them and like be the grim reaper and remind them all the time that they're going to die. We just be consistent with our gentle messaging that they're dead and they're not coming back, but they may not grasp that, and that is totally okay. We don't have to force that. From ages 5 to 7, they start to grasp that death is irreversible, but they may still believe in some kind of magical thinking. Like if I'm good, they'll come back. They'll have some kind of maybe bargaining thinking that shows up from the ages of 5 to 7. And from 8 and up, they can understand that death is universal, that it's irreversible, that it happens to everyone, including them. And so the data kind of confirms this developmental trajectory. So when your 5-year-old keeps asking if the goldfish is feeling better, they're not being silly. They're doing cognitive work that is age appropriate. So we don't have to be the grim reaper and correct kids all the time. Like, hey, you're going to die. This is real. But just be consistent when it comes up that we talk about death. We say the words, we don't shy away from it, and that it's okay. The next part of this is that we have to normalize grief and separate grief from fear. So we often kind of conflate grief with existential terror, but they're different. So let your kids feel sad when a person or a pet dies. We cry, we ask questions, we attend funerals, we draw pictures, we have goodbye rituals. But also name the difference between missing someone and fearing death itself. We miss them because we loved them. That's what makes love so powerful. It stays with us even when someone dies. You know, grief is love that has nowhere to go. We give space for grief, but we don't, in that grief, reinforce the idea that death is something to be fixed or that something wrong happened. We just normalize it as part of life, like a skinned knee, that this is something that is just the cost of life, and it's the cost of love, and that it's a cost worth paying. This is a normal thing, even though we can be crying about it. So this one is hard because it hit both of my sons more than my daughters currently. No particular reason for that, but it hit both of my sons very hard the moment that they realized that I was going to die. So my oldest son, this was years ago, it finally hit him that his mom is going to die. And he's crying in my arms. I'm crying. It's not fair. I'm in my feelings because I never want there to be a moment where he wants to talk to me and I'm not there. And just in the past year, my youngest son, who's now 7, it hit him that I'm going to die. And for a few days, he cried. For a few days, it was very difficult. But it was easier going through this time because now my 13-year-old doesn't have death anxiety. It's just ingrained in him that death is a part of life. He doesn't shy away from the idea. He's pretty inoculated to it. But to get there were times that we cried. We cried at the possibility of death. We cried when our bulldog Stella died, but it grows resilience. And that we can give we can grieve, but we then don't need to fear. The next thing that we can model is just curiosity. Kids take their cues from us. So when we whisper about death, or we visibly shut down, or we use these little code words, they learn that there's something scary about this. But if we model openness and curiosity, they'll follow suit. So we say, no one really knows what happens after we die. That can feel weird or scary. What do you think? And that goes in line with the research from Dr. Irvin Yalom, existential psychotherapist that I refer to all the time, who argues that facing death, even with kids, directly leads to deeper life satisfaction, not more fear. So kids who are allowed to grow up and wonder without being shut down, without using, softer language or kind of whispering around death, develops what researchers calls existential resilience. So another tool here is nature. Nature is going to be your best co-parent on this one, especially if you have a kid who's already struggling with concepts of death. So we use the life cycle of plants and animals and seasons to show that death is a part of everything. So see how the leaves fall in the autumns. That's not sad. That's part of the cycle. And then they become part of the soil so that new life can grow. And that's the reason that we can be here. It's our turn for existence. There's a cell in you that used to be part of a dinosaur, and the elements that are in you were formed in the crucibles of stars. And this is also actually very good at reducing narcissism too. But studies show that kids who are exposed to nature and ecological cycles will develop a healthier, more neutral view of death. It just helps them ground death in something visible and real that's not abstract or terrifying and is totally natural, that everything gets to take its turn with existence, and that you are part of things that have lived in the past, and now it's your turn to experience existence, and then your turn ends and you can see it all around you. The only reason that we get to be here is because things have died before us, and now it's our turn. We couldn't even breathe the air if all the mosquitoes that have ever lived and all the bugs that have ever lived were still living. We wouldn't even be able to breathe. So this will also help children. And the last thing for this death section is to just keep loved ones nearby and have a narrative that their life mattered. I still believe that I really still believe that even if the planet blows up. One time I was listening to this a meditation, I think Pandora Station, and a song came up, like an instrumental from Les Mis. And I remembered that the woman who gets snow shoved down her fontaine, that was something that Victor Hugo saw. That was her real life. And he wrote it into a story. And he's dead now, and she's dead now. But the story keeps circulating, touching people's hearts. We keep creating new movies around it. And then a musician hears the story, makes their own rendition of the music. And I'm listening to it again. It's like this woman who got snow shoved down her front doesn't know that her story is still rippling around the world for decades after she's gone. Like we're too interconnected. We're too connected to each other for someone not to matter. So for me, I do that the Sunday, either like before or after Halloween. We'll take out pictures of our loved ones and we'll just remember them. And that's something that the kids just know that we do. We eat sweet and sour chicken because that's my grandma's recipe who's passed on. And we just talk about people who have passed on, and we just have their pictures around. We remember them. So basically, our best advice for death is to use nature. Don't shy away from it. Just talk about it like you're talking about anything else that you talk about. Say the words, allow them to understand it over time. Under the age of 8, it's going to be a hard concept to understand. Emphasize that people's lives still matter, allowing for full grief, but without fear or that there's something wrong, because grief is just part of life and part of what it means to love. Show that calm curiosity, and then just be consistent in saying words like death and dying. And all of that builds resilience so that you can build a nervous system that can handle the idea of death. And I see that with my oldest. I understand that this is anecdotal, but I've dug into the research that I've done this enough with my oldest kid that I've seen him grow to be able to face the concept of death, and now just really has emotional resilience to the idea of death. But when he was 7 or 8, it was, we had to cry, we had to talk about things, we had to go out in nature, we had to do all these things. But I see that work has paid off in my oldest, and I hope it pays off for my other children too. So good books for this: Lifetimes, The Beautiful Way to Explain Death to Children, When Dinosaurs Die, and Duck, Death, and the Tulip. So those are 3 books that I refer people to for books about talking about death, to start that conversation if this is new for you in your parenting. Number 7, I think I'm on number 7 here, which is emotional literacy. If life has no inherent meaning, but meaning is something that we can create, then we need to raise kids who can navigate their internal world, who can tolerate discomfort, who can shift their perspectives, who can emotionally regulate. They're going to need this in general. And they're going to need this more if they're growing up without religion, because religion is not going to be the coping mechanism that's coddling their emotions. They're going to have to build that. Or else you'll raise them outside of religion, but if they don't build that, they'll just fall into the first cult that they find in college because they don't have any way to emotionally regulate. So kids who develop emotional intelligence, again, perform better in school, healthier relationships, more resilience in the face of trauma. And this isn't unique. Like, there's better voices for this in people who are experts at developing emotional resilience in children. But even just marking like, this is what sadness feels like. Where do you notice in your body when you're sad? Normalizing uncertainty. Hey, you might not know what to do next, but that's okay. We're going to figure it out together. Yes, I understand you're mad at your sister, but you also still love her. We can hold both of those emotions right now. And so for this, I really recommend, I wish I brought it from my house. Tiffany Rowe is a therapist that I don't agree on all of her stuff, but she has this regulating emotions pack. I don't get any money from it. It's not like a coupon or anything. And I understand people have mixed feelings about her as a therapist, but it's a tool that I use. It's 50 ways or 52 ways that kids can regulate their own emotions. And my kids will use this if they're feeling triggered. We can kind of go through the pack and find a way that we want to regulate. Some of it's things that I didn't know, like gargling. Some of it, and the kids can kind of go through and choose how they want to regulate their own emotions, and it helps them learn how to be in chaos, how to learn what their core values are, what feels good, what this feeling is, what to do with this feeling. And you're essentially building that in kids so that they don't need religion for that at all, because they can regulate their own emotions and their own uncertainties, and they can actually know what that emotion is and know how to deal with it, which is just huge to develop in children. I need to do this better. I am not the expert on this by any means, but the research shows that if you're going to be raising your kids outside of religion, you need to have things that help them to learn their emotional inner world. Otherwise, you're essentially giving them all the chaos that we experience as humans, and you're not giving them tools from religion, like a story that can contextualize that, and then that can lead to higher anxiety, which we sometimes see in kids who are raised outside of religion if they're not getting that. All right, number 8, emphasize awe and wonder. I do think this is something that secular parents are doing well for the most part. But one of the most powerful ways to raise a child who doesn't need fantasy to feel awe is to teach them that the real world is magical. Like, research in developmental psychology shows that early exposure to nature and exploration and unstructured play builds better attention spans, emotional regulation, creativity. We want that early exposure to awe. And they don't have to feel awe the same way you do, but we model it. Show the awe that you feel with science and nature. I feel awe with stories and movies and old churches. And then, like with my oldest, he knows that that's what mom does. And he knows that he feels that feeling when he takes the dog on a walk during a sunset. And he will stop with his dog for a moment all on his own, because he knows how mom feels awe, and he knows how dad feels awe, and he knows that this is how he feels that. And he will come back home feeling less stressed. And so things like stargazing and watching planet Earth and letting your kid just see a window into what touches you and inspires you and gives you a sense of awe and magic and wonder, and then just allowing them to access that. And it's been really wonderful to watch my 13-year-old be able to already define the things that help him to feel awe, and that if he needs a breath, he's got a test, he's stressed about something social going on at school, he knows that at sunset he can go take his dog on a walk and that he'll feel better. And he already knows that about himself. I was, I don't know, maybe 30 before I could really define how I feel awe and how I could access that in my life. And he's already doing that at 13. And that's something I've been really proud to see. All right. Number 9 is be aware of what you're bleeding onto your kids. So my oldest kid, he isn't nihilistic, he isn't neurotic, but I do think that earlier on, when I was more in that space, I bled on him a little bit, that he's not me, and he wasn't recovering from religion, and maybe I was projecting too much on him. So in rejecting religious or toxic positivity parenting, sometimes nihilistic parents will lean too far into the bleak side, raising kids to be kind of miniature existential realists before they have the emotional tools to hold that weight. So like the first few Christmases I had, I couldn't do any like Santa Claus or Easter Bunny or any made up stories of any kind, because I was dealing with my own religious trauma trauma. I was annoyed by all of it. And I do think I brushed off some of my child's natural wonder and imagination as naive or problematic. And I shut it down a little bit because I was in a place that I couldn't play in imaginative spaces because of my own pain, my own trauma, my own issues. And so I do sometimes see nihilists talking about death or injustice or the void or problems going on in the world a little bit too early or in adult terms. And they're confusing kind of honesty with hopelessness. So we need to let kids develop their capacity for meaning making before hitting them with like full cosmic dread. So wonder and play are developmental needs. They're not delusions, but sometimes because of our own issues or our own nihilism, we're kind of bleeding onto them in ways that can be unhealthy for the stage that they are. So I was going to do 10, but I think that's it for me. That's 9 pieces of advice. I was going for 10, but hey, the universe is absurd. Why do I have to do 10? That's all I got. So let me know if this was helpful. What's working for you? What's not working? Antinatalism, or whether the idea of whether or not it's ethical to have kids or not, is a whole other concept that I'll do in a separate video. I have one biological child, but then became an antinatalist before I even knew the word for it. So my other 3 children are adopted. And we can do antinatalism and the ethics of pushing the big red button and the ethics around having children in another video. But for people who have had children and then either had a faith deconstruction or really, went into nihilism or really went into secularism, and they already have kids, and you're like, what do I do now? These kids are already here. I don't even know how to structure my own life, barely, much less these kids. I hope that this was helpful if you're in that place. I don't always read the comments on YouTube. I need to get better at that. But since I'm putting my own parenting out there, I really want to hear from you, and because this is an area where there's areas to improve. There's things I'm not sure on. There's things I'm trying. There's things I'm changing my mind on. So I'm in it with you on this one. So I really want to hear from you, and I will see you next week. Thanks.